Hello and welcome back, and thank you for coming back. So the last couple of videos that we looked at were looking at lists, and today we're going to be looking at arrays. So what we're going to look at specifically is to know what an array is and how we can use it, how you can create an array, assign a value to a given index and iterate over it, and recognize that an array is a reference type and know how to use it as an array as a parameter of a method. Okay, so there's a few things in here that you'll be familiar with from the list videos that we've looked at. So for example, iterating over means to loop through or loop over. Indexes refer to the position of an element in the array or in the list. So these are things that we're going to be looking at. So we've gotten familiar with the array list, which has a lot of functionality to make the life of a programmer easier. Perhaps the most important is about adding elements. From the point of view of the programmer, the size in an array list is unlimited. In reality, there are no magic tricks in an array list. They have been programmed like any other program or tools offered by the programming language. When you create a list, a limited number of space is reserved in the memory of the computer. When the array list runs out of space, a larger space is reserved and the data from the previous space is copied to the new one. So that might seem like a bit of an odd thing to open with, but with an array you have to decide how big the array is going to be before you use it. So that was quite a big thing with arrays and the difference between arrays and array lists. Even though array list is simple to use, sometimes we need the ancestor of the array list, the array. An array contains a limited amount of numbered spots or indices for the values. The length or size of an array is the amount of these spots, i.e. how many values can you place in the array. So just quickly here, you can see that they've created this array and they've put the number 3 on it. So that means that that array is going to have 3 spots of space. The values of an array are called elements. There are 2 ways to create an array. The first one is you have to explicitly define the size upon creating. This is how you create an array to hold 3 integers. So we've got int, and then we've got these square brackets here, which are where the curly braces are. But you do or don't press shift. I guess you must press shift because you don't need to for the curly braces. They've called their integer array numbers, and they've said it's equal to a new integer array with a value or 3 elements in its size. An array is declared by adding square brackets after the type of elements it contains. So we've got type of elements and then the square brackets. A new array is created by calling new followed by the type of elements, square brackets and the number of elements in the square brackets. An array to hold 5 strings can be created like this. So here we've got our data type, which is string. We've got our square brackets to signify that it is an array. And then here we've got our name of the array, so strings, but remember you can call that anything. So if you think back to when we've been looking at scanners, we called our scanner scanner or input, and that's the same here. So you could call this pet name, colleague name, literally anything you want. It's just the reference to that array, that string of array of strings, sorry. And then we're saying it's equal to new string, and it has a value of, or a space for 5 elements. So remembering that arrays start at 0, there would actually be 4 elements, which again sounds really terrible, so I'll explain it with NetBeans. So let's just make that a bit bigger. So I'm just opening this swap one, this swap class, and I'll show you what I mean. Oh, in fact, this has actually already got an example here. So remember, arrays start at 0. So the 0th element or 0th index has a value of 1 stored there. The first index has a value of 3, the second index 5, and so on. So that hopefully was a bit of a better way to explain it. Let's just close that down. Right, let's go back here. So remember when we were using array list, we were able to search for an element in the array using the search function. We could look for strings between the brackets if we use the double quotes. We could use the .value of to find an integer, or we could use integers to find the index number, or the index value. An element of an array is referred to by its index, so these numbers are the indexes. In the example below, we create an array to hold 3 integers and then assign values to indices, 0 and 2. After that, print the values. So we've said that at the 0th index we've assigned a value of 2, and at the second index we've assigned a value of 5. So 1 hasn't got anything assigned to it, and then we can print out the 0th index and the second one. Assigning a value to a specific spot of an array works much like assigning a value in a normal variable, but in the array you must specify the index, i.e. to which spot you want to assign the value. The index is specified in square brackets. The array get method works very similarly to accessing an element of an array, just the syntax or the way the things are written is slightly different. So here the index is an integer and its value is between 0 and the length of the array minus 1. So for example, an array that holds 5 elements has indices 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't have 5, which is why we've got the minus 1. So here we've got our an example. So we've got a scanner which allows us to take user input. We've got a integer array with space for 5 elements. Each of the 5 elements, 0 through 4, has got a value. And then here we've got which index should we access, so which of these numbers should we access. And then it will print out that, that index there, or the element in that index. The value held in an array can also be assigned to the value of another variable. So here, same sort of scenario, or same sort of example, sorry. And then we've got system out print, which value should we access, and then we've got int number equals numbers. What they're doing here is they're saying that int number is going to be equal to the numbers held at that index, and then they can print out the number. Okay, so swapping array values. Below there is an array that contains integers. Which of the following snippets of code swaps the values at indices 0 and 1? The value originally at index 0 is now at index 1 and vice versa. If we have a look at these, because we're going to need to be swapping the numbers around, we're definitely going to be needing more than one line. We're actually going to be needing more than 2 lines as well, because we're going to need an integer to hold almost a temporary store. So you can see here we've got 3 lines. So we're saying the int helper, which is our temp store is going to be equal to the position 0. Position 0 is going to be equal to the position 1, and position 1 is then going to be equal to helper. So that one seems pretty good. Int helper is equal to numbers 1. Numbers 1 is equal to 0 as well, and then number 0 is equal to helper. So I reckon it's probably that one. Yay, there we go, cool. So the exercise template already contains a program. Modify the program to do the following. After the first printing, the program should ask for 2 indices from the user. The values in those indices should be swapped, and in the end the values of the array should be printed once again. Okay, cool. So we're going to need to move that over here, might be quite easy. It might make it easier to see what's going on. Let's just give this a run and see what it does. Oh, I hate that. Put that down there. There we go. Oh, okay, cool. So they've actually given us a lot of what we want. So implement here, asking for the 2 indices and then swapping them. Roll. Enter 2 numbers. And then we can say int I is equal to, and then we're going to say, what's the name of our scanner? Oh, scanner. So scanner dot next int, and then we can say int j is equal to scanner dot next int, and then let's see what we've got here. So system out, so that's just a blank line, isn't it? Index is equal to 0, while index is less than the length of the array. So it'll loop through this, print out the array index, and then add 1. Okay, so what we can do is implement something very, very similar to this here. We can say int temp is equal to, is it numbers? Oh, array. Array 0. Oh. We could say array 1 is equal, oh my days, is equal to array 0. Then we can say array 0 is equal to temp. Okay, let's just have a think about that, make sure we got that right. Oh, got that wrong, haven't I? Should be 0, that should be 1, and that should be 1. Let's give that another run locally. So we should get a break in our program where we've got that, this bit here, that's right. So if we enter 2 and 4, so there we go. We can see that 2 is different, and 4 would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so that doesn't look like it worked. Let's have a look. Just scroll this down while we're waiting for it. Okay, so let's see what errors we got. Okay, that's fine. So it gives us very specific errors, so we know where we've gone, or where I've gone wrong. Sorry, I shouldn't keep saying we. Where I've gone wrong. We can look at these specific areas and see what we need to do to get them fixed. So let's scroll up. So something that I thought of is that's going to need to be -1. So let's give that a little run. See what we get back. Not the same error. Okay, let's have a good look at this. So I've just rearranged my screen to have a look at it properly. The first thing that sort of jumps out to me looking at the code in this sort of long view is that I haven't used these variables. So we've got this data being stored here, but I haven't actually made any use of it. So I need to implement the switching round of the array. So we're going to need to change the positions. So what we can do is say that array at position I is equal to j. That would need to be I, and I think that would need to be j. Let's give that another little run and see what we get back. So here we've got the error, which is fine because obviously it tells me more specifically what the problem is. So when the values in indices 2 and 4 were swapped, index 1 should have contained 3, but it now contains 7. So it sounds like maybe those two just need switching round. When the values at indices 1 and 3 were swapped, index should be 0 and now contain 5. Let's just quickly change these. There we go, we've now got a pass. The problem was, I had this bit right, but because I added -1 in, it wasn't actually the index then, it wasn't the indice that we were looking for, because I removed the 1. So I got rid of that, and then changed the swap section around, submitted that locally, and it seems to work. So I've sent that off, and then hopefully we should be able to move on to the next section. And there we go. So we can OK that. Close this. There we are. And let's head back to here. Let's just give that a little refresh. There we go. Cool. You can assume that the array contains the given indices. You'll need an additional variable to store one of the values for a little while. That's fine. So that's what we did. You can find the size of array through the associated variable length. You can access this associated variable by writing the name of the array, a dot, and then the method. So here we've got numbers.length. Note that this is not a method call, so numbers.length doesn't work. You can iterate over the array or go through each element of the array with a while loop. So here we've got our sort of basic setup that we're familiar with now, hopefully. We've got a prompt. So the array has this many elements. Int index is equal to 0. While index is less than numbers.length, system.out.print the number, the index, and then loop back round. So index is equal to the value plus 1. So then it becomes 1. Loop through again, then it becomes 2, and so on until the index is not less than numbers.length. So there you go. You can see that the array has got 4 elements. And then we've got the system.out.print, and it's printing the value of the elements of the array index. The example above iterates over indices 0, 1, 2, and 3, and at each index prints the value held in the index. So first it prints number index 0, then index 1, and so on. Your iteration stops once the condition of the loop index is less than number.length is false. So that would be when the index variable is greater or equal to the length of the array. The iteration doesn't stop the moment the index variable grows too big. The condition is evaluated only in the beginning of the while loop. So here we've got a little example, so we can begin to step through that. So there we've created our 4 elements inside our index, and then we begin to assign them. So we've just assigned 42, just assigning 13, 12 and 7, and you can see how those values update over here. We've got our system out, and then we can start working through the while loop. So if we keep clicking through that, we should get the printout. So you can see the index is updating on each iteration through. There we go. Then on the last iteration, it goes back to line 12 to evaluate. It's no longer true, so it breaks out of this loop, goes to the next method up, which is the main. There's nothing else to do in there, and so that program would end. The exercise template already has an array containing numbers. Complete the program so that it asks the user for a number to search in the array. If the array contains the given number, the program tells the index containing the number. If the array doesn't contain the number, the program will advise the number was not found. So here we go, we've got search for 3, and then we've got 3 is at index 4. So we've got some good examples there that we can look at. Let's head back to NetBeans. Why is that open? There we go. Okay, so we have got our scanner, we've got our int array with 8 values. We have got system out prints, we've got our user prompt search for, implement the search functionality here. Okay. Right, so what we're going to do is create a quick if statement, which is going to iterate through the array, and it's going to compare each element of the array to the number that's been passed to it. So, or the number that we've been passed from the user input. So we'll do array.length, length, and then I++, which is a standard sort of for loop that we've seen. We are going to say that if the searching is equal to array at position I. So we say position I because each time it loops through, it does the I++. So on its second iteration, that would be 1. So it will be comparing the input to position 1, then 2, and so on all the way through the array. Let's see. So we will need that. Whoops. What have I done there? There we go. Then we can say system out. Let's just see what we were meant to write. Search for 3 is at index 4. For the else, we're going to need searching was not found and then full stop. So if we just go back in and add that else, this one should be done and ready for testing. Excellent, that's another one done. So let's close that one down and then head to the next bit, see what we've got to do next. If the index is pointing outside the array, the element doesn't exist, and we get an array index out of bounds exception, this error tells that the array doesn't contain the given index. You cannot access outside of the array, i.e. index that's less than 0 or greater or equal to the size of the array. The next example is a program that initially asks the user to enter how many numbers and then enter the numbers. Finally, it prints back the numbers in the same order. The numbers are stored in the array. So what we've got here is our array, and differently to last time, we've got a variable in there, and our variable is going to be equal to the value that's passed to it using the scanner. Then we have got a while loop, which is saying that while the index is less than the size of the array, it will loop through, get the value of the number at the index, and then add it to index. And then looks like it'll print it out. Oh, there we go. So this is the printout one. And then it adds one to go through to the next number up. And there we go, and we've got the example here. You can create an array stating the type of elements of the array followed by square brackets. Therefore, the elements of the array can be of any type. So here's a few examples. So we've got string, double, those two examples there. There are others that you can use too. And you can look those up as well. So you could say Java types of array. Oh, no, that's different types of array, sorry. Data types is what I meant. So data types. There we go, so here's a list. I'm fairly sure you can create arrays of classes and objects as well, but that would be a bit more advanced. You certainly can in lists. Java array of strings, empty arrays. But there you go. So you can do more research around it if you need to, or if you want to. So arrays as a parameter of a method. So this is looking at what we've looked at before, where we've created methods and then passed parameters or arguments to a method. You can actually pass arrays. So you can use arrays as a parameter of a method, just like any other variable, as an array is a reference type. The value of the array is referenced to the information contained within. When you use arrays as a parameter of a method, the method receives a copy of the reference to the array. So here's our example. We've got a public static and void. So with it being void, we know that it doesn't have a return type. With it being static, we know that somewhere it's going to be called by the main. Here we've got our array type of integer, and we can see that it's an array because it's got the square brackets, and then it's called integer array. Okay, so system out, the elements of the array are, and then it's just going to loop through and print them all out. So you can call that method to list out your elements. As noticed earlier, you can freely choose the name of a parameter inside the method. The name doesn't have to be the same as the name of the variable when you call the method. In the example above, we call the array integer array. Meanwhile, the caller of the method has named the same array numbers. Array is an object, so when you change the array inside the method, the changes persist after the execution of a method. Okay, so what have we got here? Sum of an array. Complete the method so that it computes and returns the sum of the numbers in the array it receives as a parameter. You can try out the computation of the sum with this example. Okay, cool. So let's head back to our NetBeans. I'll just move that there. And then we can expand our package, then all the way down to our class and get this open. So we've got this example here. That's great. Okay, and they're printing out the array and they're passing the array. So sorry, just the example they gave here about the different names. This is actually quite a good way to look at that. So here we've got the array called array, and here we've got another array also called array. Those two arrays don't need to have the same name. Okay, it doesn't matter because we are calling the method and passing an array. It doesn't necessarily have to match the name of this one, so you can call it whatever you. And again, you could call this a different name and this one, as long as these two match. It doesn't matter, but if that makes any better sense for you guys. Okay, so what we're going to need is some sort of loop. So we're going to need to loop through the array. So I'm probably going to use an if statement. So we can say if int I equals 0, I is less than array.length I++. So this is our sort of standard little loop again. And got the wrong symbol here. There we go. What have I missed? Oh, there we are. Oh my days, what's going on? Int I equals 0, I is less than array.length I++. It's because I wrote if and it should be 4. Perfect, there we go. So we are going to say, so we're going to need a variable, aren't we, to store our values in. So we can call that sum equals 0. And then say sum plus equals I. And then, do we need to print it out? Let's just find this again. So it just prints out the number. In fact, the number will just be printed out with the return we've got. So let's do return sum. There we are. Let's give that a little run and see what we get back. Okay. The sum returned by the method was 0. That's not a good start. When it was supposed to be 77. The content of the array was 77. That would probably be... Let's give that a try, because what I was doing there was adding the sort of steps that it had taken through the array rather than the actual value held at that array, or at that element of the array. So by adding array.i in, we're making sure that the actual element is being added to our sum, and then the sum returned here. And it looks like that one's passed. So that is good. There we are, some lovely little passes. So we'll refresh that. Close this down. And then it looks like we've got print neatly. So complete the method public static void print neatly int array in the class named array printer to make it print the numbers of the array it receives more neatly. There should be white space and a comma between each number. Don't put a comma after the last number. Print the numbers on one line using system.out.print, and you can try printing with this example. Let's have a look at this. So again, we're going to be using another loop to go through, or to iterate through the array. So let's get the loop set up. So for int I equals 0, oh my days, I is less than array.length, and then I plus plus. Okay. So what we're going to need to do is print out the elements. So we can do sout, or that would be this one. And the first thing we would print out would be the array. So array at point I. Then we would do plus, comma, oh hang on, that's the wrong way around, so that space needs to be there. There we go. Just give that a little run locally and see what we get back. Okay, there we go. So I've run it locally, and we've got 51342. Oh, and then it's got the comma. So we could do an if statement to say that while I is less than the array.length minus 1, that it would print out this line, and then otherwise it wouldn't. So we could do if array.length is less than, oh hang on, so it would be I less than array.length minus 1. Let's give that a little test and see what happens. So we'd be expecting something very similar, hopefully. So we've got 5134. Oh, okay, sorry. So that we would need an else, wouldn't we? So it would be else sout, and then it would just be array I, like that, because we still want it to print the fifth, or the fourth element of the array, don't we? There we go. Let's give that a run and see how we get on, what we get back. And there we go. That one's all passed, so we can OK that, send that off, and then we will be working on this next one, which is print in stars. There we go. So we've got that one passed. Let's close that and open up our print the stars, or print in stars, sorry. There we go. Right, let's move that back down here. So complete the method, that one, in the class named printer to make it print out a row of stars for each number in the array. The amount of stars on each row is defined by the corresponding number in the array. You can try printing with this example. So here we go, we've got our example. So we're going to need probably a nested loop. So we can do for int I equals 0. We'll do I is less than the array size. So this is going to be the outer loop, which is going to keep track of the array. And then I'm imagining that the inner loop will keep track of each of the elements. So here we've got 5. So the inner array, the inner loop will print out 5 stars. Then the next one will print 1. So if we do a nested loop, I think that might get us where we want to be. So let's do j less than array I plus plus, system out, it wouldn't be print line, it would just be like that. And then we would need a new line. Let's give that a run and see what we get. Oh, didn't like that, did it? Just had my microphone on mute while I was testing this one, sorry guys. So the problem was my variable here, instead of being j, was actually I, so I was updating the wrong value. So with that updated, this seems to work. And there you go, we've got our pass. So let's close that one down. There we are, head back to har. Give that a refresh, may as well. So the shorter way to create an array. Just like for strings, there's also a shortcut to create an array. Here we create an array to hold 3 integers and initiate it with values 100, 1 and 42. So apart from calling for new, we can initialize an array with a block that contains comma-separated values to be assigned in the array. This works for all types. Below, we initialize an array of strings, then floating point numbers, and finally the values are printed. So here we've got our arrays, which are already being populated. So because they've got values in them, we don't need to say whether it's 3 or 4, because, like I say, the array's already got data in there. When you initialize an array with a block, the length of the array is precisely the number of the values specified in the block. The values of the block are assigned to the array in order. For example, the first value is assigned to index 0, and the second value to index 1. So here we go, that's quite a good little demonstration. So you can see that at position 0, or element 0 in the array, we've got a value of 100. At element 1, we've got a value of 1. Element 2, we've got a value of 42, and so on. And then we've got these printouts, which are printing at the 0th position and the 2nd position. Just like in array lists, you can't access an index out of bounds outside the array. You can try out the following example on your own computer for the example in the sandbox. If you want to give it a go, you're very welcome. But it looks like we've completed this section, so I'll get this video finished and uploaded. It's only a short one, and then we will move straight on to strings. So as always, thank you very much for watching. I hope it's been helpful, and if there is ever anything that you think that I could go through with a better explanation, please let me know in the comments. And if you're happy to keep seeing the videos, please hit subscribe, that would be great. Speak to you next time, and happy coding.